I am Director of Market Development for the North Dakota Soybean Council. So last year in North Dakota, in the 2021 season, we had record acres. We had about 7.1 million acres harvested. However, we had very dry weather, and so our yields were at about 25.5 bushels per acre, which is low for us. And so even with record acres, our production was at about 182 million bushels, which was less than the year before, even with record acres, just because of the weather and the lower yields. We do a state quality assessment report, and we are seeing lower protein from last year. I would think that has something to do with the drought that we saw, and so we are seeing lower protein from last year than we typically do in North Dakota. I think people were actually surprised at how okay total production turned out to be. You know, the yields weren't great, but we had those record acres that helped us. Right now, this winter, we've had a lot of snow. So the question on everyone's mind is, how is the snow going to melt? Because, you know, if it is a nice slow melt, we can take advantage of that moisture. Sometimes if it's a fast melt, it doesn't soak into the ground. Just anecdotally, from what I hear, I think a lot of farmers are mostly sold on their beans just because prices have been good, and you know, you don't want to turn down good prices. And so obviously in the past couple weeks here, prices have gotten even better, so those farmers that do have soybeans left are probably getting very good prices for them. Right now, specifically, the basis is quite good in North Dakota. And I think a lot of that has to do with the South American crop and just seeing that there's going to be more demand for the US crop. I think we're going to see high acres again in North Dakota for soybeans. So we broke a record last year. I don't want to say I think we'll break a record again this year, but I don't think it's impossible. You know, prices are just good for soybeans, and if you're a local farmer and you know these crush plants are coming online, you're probably optimistic about basis, especially with bids coming next fall to the Spiritwood crush plant. I think we're going to see a lot of soybean acres go into North Dakota. I think what's also helping fuel that is, you know, typically your rotation with soybeans is corn, and with all of the fertilizer market issues right now and corn being a heavy fertilizer user, you know, soybeans might just be a safer bet. I think we have potential for a really big crop. So currently in North Dakota, there's very little soybean processing. In terms of the volume we grow, the processing is so small you could almost say it's negligent. So almost all of our beans go by, they're whole beans, unprocessed, that go by rail out to the Pacific Northwest and to Asia for export. Right now in North Dakota, we have one crush plant that is under construction, and we have one crush plant that has been announced. The crush plant that is under construction currently expects to put out bids this fall and actually be operating in 2023. The other crush plant is much farther down the line. We're probably a couple years out from, you know, if everything goes through with that crush plant coming to fruition. But the two crush plants, if they both do come to fruition and are crushing beans in North Dakota, those two crush plants will take half of the soybean crop grown in North Dakota. It's going to very much change where North Dakota soybeans go. We're going from crushing 0% of our soybeans to maybe 50% of our soybeans. So, you know, there's a lot of questions right now about moving those soybeans, because when we've been a state that is built to move all of our whole soybeans west, and now you're going to keep some of that in state. Obviously, some of our whole beans will still go west, but we're likely going to have soybean meal going west now. Transportation's a big question on people's minds in North Dakota, because we're going to have to see some changes, and it's hard to change infrastructure. The meal is the big question mark. Everyone wants to know, where's the meal going to go? We don't have a lot of livestock in North Dakota. We're trying to change that, but you can't change that in a year. So we are trying to get more livestock on feed so we can keep as much in the state as possible. But everyone is really thinking that meal is going to head to the Pacific Northwest. I've also heard some people say maybe it will go into Canada. That's the big question. Where is all this meal going to go in North Dakota?